get started. Okay, today we're beginning chapter 30 of our book, which actually starts talking about a melacha, or two melachot, known as tifira ukri'ah. Tifira means sew stitches, to use a pin and a needle, or something like that, and some kind of thread to stitch things together. Ukri'ah means tearing, and the kri'ah, in the basic sense of the term, means to undo the stitching that we just did, to rip out the stitching for the purpose of restitching. That's the melacha. So it says as follows: "Hatofer shtei tefirot b'Shabbat." In order to violate the isur from the Torah, you have to do two stitches, right? Meaning, if you look at, I don't know, your shirt, right? Your shirt is stitched together, right? In all sorts of different places. And just the sleeve over here, how many stitches are there? Probably tens of stitches, right? In order to violate the isur, you have to have stitched two stitches. One stitch apparently is not enough. It doesn't, either won't hold, or it's not permanent enough, or something along those lines. One stitch will not do it from the Torah, but two stitches already, you will get into the problem of you committed the melacha of Shabbat. So it doesn't take long. Right? All you have to do is take the needle with the thread and run it through the cloth two times, and you have violated the melacha of tefirah. Now, in order to violate that, you would have to have also not only run the thread through twice, but you need on each end a little bit of a knot so that it doesn't go anywhere, right? Because if it just, one, two through, it's not going to stay even a little bit. So it's two stitches with the ends being tied so that the stitches actually hold. Okay. And if you stitched more than two stitches, even if you didn't tie at the end, you would be chayav, because at that point, once you do three stitches or more, so it doesn't matter if you tied it at the ends, because if you didn't tie, even if you didn't tie it at the end, since you did a few stitches, it's gonna hold, and it's not gonna go anywhere. So again, we're talking about stitching on Shabbat, and sewing effectively, and you're not allowed to sew on Shabbat. The measure of how much you do is two stitches, provided that you tie them at the end. If you don't tie them at the end, the measure is three stitches, okay? So that's the basic concept of tearing on Shabbat. That's the basic concept of sewing on Shabbat. Let's say you have a thread that is already in there, right? And but the string is sticking out, and by pulling the string, you now ensure it stays in place, right? You're pulling on it, and by pulling on it, it stays in its place. So that would be forbidden as well. Same thing. Let's say you have a button on the jacket or on the shirt. One second, guys. So if you have a button on the jacket, and by pulling the string, it'll fasten it into place or hold it into place, you're not allowed to do that. Hold on one second, guys. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay. So next thing that we have is, so again, stitching. Okay. Now, shiroch hamushchal bekatze kova shel mi'il geshem, mutar lemotcho o laharpa'oto b'Shabbat, af al pi shemetichato mitkavetz hakova umitadek saviv larosh, ובעריפתו נפתח הקבץ וההידוק, שואל בסופו לפשוט את הכובע על לרפות את ההידוק, אין כאן תפירה מתקיימת, וגם אין כאן דמיון לתפירה כלל, כיוון שיש נקב מיוחד בקצה הכובע שבו מושחל החוט. So he's talking about a rain hat, although this could be any article of clothing. I could think of also a hooded sweatshirt or sweatpants or some other article of clothing which has a string as part of the clothing, right? And by pulling it, you make it tighter, or by loosening it, you loosen it up. So that there's no problem in using that on Shabbat, because since it has a special hole made for it, this is not actually sewing the clothing, stitching two pieces of clothing together, which is the isur. The isur is where you take two different pieces of fabric, right, and you cling them together, right, by use of the stitching. But here, you're not doing that. What are you doing? There's like a track within that article of clothing, and this is running through that track, so therefore there's no stitching involved, and that would be allowed. Okay. אסור להסיר הכפתור מן הבגד, אפילו אם נתרופף החוט המחברו, וכן אסור להסיר את חוטי התפירה שנשארו אחרי נשירת הכפתור. You're not allowed to pull a button off or to undo the stitching of clothing, like to take this and start ripping it apart, right? You can't do that. מותר לדחוף סיכת ביטחון בבגד בכל מטרה נחוצה, כגון להחזיק את הבגד במקום כפתור שנפל, או He says, what about a safety pin, right? If I have a safety pin, right, you guys know those little metal items, right? Let's say the button on my shirt ripped and now my shirt is broken, right? And I still want to be able to wear the shirt. So he says you're allowed to take a safety pin and just pin it together. It's not permanent, it's not sewing, it's not using the thread, so therefore it's not a problem. You could even run it through 2 or even 3 times if you need, in order for it to hold in its place. So to use a safety pin is okay. It's not a problem of sewing.
Rabbi,
yeah.
If you have a button, let's say a suit jacket, and the button's like dangling off, and you're out of the house or something, and you realize that if you don't like pull it off and put it in your pocket, you can lose it. Is that allowed? Or
right now, you would not be allowed to do that. You can be careful with it, I guess would be the advice that we have, but you can't pull it off. That would be exactly what you're not allowed. That is like textbook melacha, because what are you doing? You're tearing it off for the purpose of restoring it. So you would not be allowed to do it. And you're also, ironically, and not as we said, you're not allowed to take the string and pull it tighter or wrap it around or something like that. So there's a button store on Kings Highway. It'll open it up in a couple of months, in a couple of weeks, but hopefully it's still in business, but that's what we have.
Got it.
Okay. אסור לתת נוצות בקר וכסת, אם הנוצות לא היו באותו הקר והכסת, אבל הנוצות שנפלו מן הקר והכסת, מותר להחזירן לאותו קר וכסת, אבל ייזהר שלא יתפור. So this we don't really do anymore, I don't think, but if you have a pillowcase that has feathers, and the feathers have fallen out, you're allowed to put the feathers back in, but you can't stuff a pillow from scratch. וצריך להיזהר שלא להניח בגדים בתוך הכיס, כדי שלא יהיה כמו קר לשכב עליו. And he also says, I'm not sure why this gets into sewing and where this comes from, but he also says that you can't take clothing and stuff it into a pillowcase in order to use it as a pillow. I'm not sure why that would be something. Anyway, יש אומרים שמותר לחבר בשבת פרווה של צנר במעיל גשם על ידי רוחסן, ואין בזה חשש של תופר. You can take a kind of like a belt around the raincoat, and there's no problem with that, meaning to loop it through the loops of the raincoat. ויש חולקים אומרים שאסור לחבר בשבת על ידי רוחסן, וכיוון שיש בזה מחלוקת, לכן עדיף יותר לחבר את הפרווה בערב שבת, רק אם שכח מערב שבת. Okay, fine. So fine, there's that. Okay. Now we're going to get to something that's, most of us don't do most of these things, so that's not a concern. Now we're going to talk about tearing, and tearing has to do with, we're going to talk about tearing paper for the most part, which is most of the things that we would be tearing. Now, I want to point out that in terms of the tearing, what we had said was that tearing from the Torah is for the purpose of restoring, right? You tear you pull apart over here in order to re-stitch it, right? You pull apart, somewhere where it's already torn a little bit. You make a bigger tear, maybe more even, in order to be able to sew it together. That's in the Torah. That's the isur from the Torah. So to tear something for other purposes, right? Like to just tear it apart, that is not considered tearing from the Torah. So let's talk about it. En korin et haniyar mepnei shu k'metaken kli, v'makpid lachtof midah chayav gam shu melechet mechatech. Says, even though what I just said is true, he says you can't tear paper if it is somehow setting that piece of paper up in order to be used as a utensil. If you're creating something out of it by the tearing, that becomes a problem. Also, another possible problem with tearing is if you tear something at a precise length, there's another melacha of cutting things into precise pieces, which they used to do for the leather work that they did. They would cut things into precise pieces. So to cut something into precise pieces could be a problem. By the way, that you could see that being an issue when it comes to toilet paper. We'll get to that. To the toilet paper. Okay. Asur לקרוע נייר toilet לצורך קינוח, ומקום מקום במקום הכרח גדול, ובאין הצעה אחרת כגון ששכחו לקרוע מערב שבת, או שנגנו הניירות הקרועות, יש להתיר לחתוך רק בלאחר יד, כגון לקרוע ברגלו ובמרפקו ושלא במידה. וישתדל לקרוע דווקא שלא במקום הניקוב, כדי למנוע מאיסור מחתך. So he talks about here exactly the point that I just said, which is toilet paper, right? So toilet paper, most chachamim will say that toilet paper should be cut before Shabbat, or use the pre-cut, the tissues or something like that, because they don't want you tearing the toilet paper on Shabbat. There's different reasons for this, but the one that's most commonly used is exactly that point of the cutting set amounts. He says, however, if you haven't or you don't, he does say that you can cut, but he advises to cut not along the lines, but to cut in a different spot on the toilet paper, so that you're not doing precision cuts. You're not doing exact lengths. You kind of just any amount will do, and so that's the advice that people give when it comes to using toilet paper. A lot of people just use like the Kleenex box of tissues or something like that. I've seen when I've been on hotels, on seminars and things like that, they have these like packs where you just pull it out, kind of like tissues. So there's all sorts of possibilities, but again, some people will say that it's not an issue altogether, especially if you're not cutting along the line. So I would say if you on Shabbat don't cut along the lines, so you have what to rely upon. Okay, next one. Asur likroa niyar, hamadbek niyarot o orot, hareze toladat tofer v'chayav. To take two pieces of paper and stick them together, right? To take glue or scotch tape and to take two pieces of paper and put them together. This is tofer. This is one of the melachot of the Torah. וכן המפרק ניירות דבוקות או אורות דבוקים ולא נתכוון לקלקל בבד, הרי זה תולדת קורא בחייו. And so too, if you had two pieces of paper together and you're breaking them apart in order to use them in a way that's not destructive, it's somehow creative by taking them apart, that would be a problem also. So he says, ולכן יש להיזהר כשקונה ספר חדש, שיפריד את הדפים מערב שבת אם יודע שיצטרך את הספר בשבת. So he says, therefore, if you have very often on a new book, right, you can have a situation where the books are all stuck together, the pieces are all stuck together, and you're opening it up. So he says that you should not do that. There are other opinions on this, and actually, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to quote the opinion, but I believe it is okay to open it. What you don't want to do is where sometimes the product has not been ripped, just for it to be new, and like you see on this book it has like the gold siding. To open that up is not a problem, even if it was a little bit stuck together. But sometimes you'll see in a book that the papers were not cut. And then what you do, you have to take a scissor or your finger and kind of pull it out. That you should not do on Shabbat, because that you're really tearing for the purpose of using the book, which it was not done. So that would not be allowed. But as he says in the Bekuda Pe'asefar Shabbat, but if the wax or the whatever that coating on the outside is there, that you're allowed to do. That wasn't created to stay that way. It's not a problem. So therefore, that would be allowed. So let's talk about that. Okay, let's keep going.
Wait, Rabbi,
yeah.
Sorry. So wait, if you have let's say just a box or anything, can you open up a package? Or do you have to
I'm getting to that. A package, an envelope, or something like that. We're getting to that. I think he gets to it. Yes, he does. Okay. So let me just hurry up so that we can get to everything. Okay, we'll skip that one. So he talks about diapers, right? So he says you're allowed to use a diaper, a disposable diaper, but one of the things that you do is that you kind of are tucking it together and taking it apart, but nevertheless, the diapers are allowed because they're not intended to last very long. And also there's a major need for them. So therefore, the diapers that we have, even though it has a little bit of tape or that Velcro connection, that is allowed to be created. Good. 1 second. Okay. Good. Okay, so that's diapers. Okay. מותר לקרוע שקיות נייר או ניילון שיש בהם דברי מאכל, ובלבד שלא ישתמש בהם שימוש נוסף אחר פתיחתן ברקת תוכנן. So he says, what about opening packages, right? So there's lots of different packages that we could be talking about here. So I'm going to go through a few of them. So first of all, the easiest one that everyone agrees is allowed is I can open the package of food that's in my cabinet or my refrigerator or something like that. I can open that up, even though I'm tearing it, and some people might look at it as I'm creating a utensil. Not a problem. So too, I am allowed to, if a box from Amazon comes, assuming it's something that I can use on Shabbat, because there's a lot of things that come on Shabbat that I cannot use, but assuming it's something I can use, I can, punch open or tear open the box. But many authorities will say, but you have to make sure you're not going to reuse that box. We could talk about that. I would say even if you wanted to reuse the box, I think you would still be able to do it. But there are opinions that would say if you're not using the box. What else did I want to? Envelopes. So an envelope may be
Rabbi,
torn open.
Can you just?
I'm sorry? I lost you. I didn't hear you. You faded out. I don't know if that's me or you.
The last thing, can you repeat it? It's in here. The connection's not good. Do you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to repeat it again.
Okay, thank you.
So again, you can open up the box in your refrigerator in your pantry, no problem. You can open up the Amazon box, provided, according to some opinions, you're not going to reuse it again. But the main thing is that it's not something, you can't open up your new computer, or your an iron or something like that, where you can't use it on Shabbat anyway, so you can't open it. The other thing that we were talking about was an envelope. So an envelope, it depends if you're allowed to open the envelope. We talked about this before when we talked about the Vrechol on Shabbat. So if you're looking at your electric bill, so the issue isn't the envelope, the issue is the electric bill. You can't open up the electric bill. But let's say you got a letter from your friend, an invitation or something like that, you are allowed to open that up. You could tear it, or you can open it along the, either way, you're allowed to open those invitations. because that is not that's not tearing for the purpose of creating something. It's a destructive tearing, and therefore that would be allowed.
But Rabbi, do you need it on Shabbat? You don't really need it.
It's a good question. So that was what was one of the things we talked about when we talked about getting something. They allow you, when you get a letter that they call like Tidishat Shalom. It's like good and welfare, and either because you'll worry about it or because it'll pick you up and you'll feel good about it, then they allow you to open it. So when I see something that says, oh, it's from Elliot Sabag, right? So then I want to know what's going on. I want to know what happened. Did he have a baby? So I'm allowed to open it up for that purpose on Shabbat. So it does have that Shabbat purpose, even though I'm positive, right, that it's not going to be used on that Shabbat. But for me, it's beneficial to have that. Plus, I would add, and this is just my own add. Let's say that came, right, and now I'm going to see you later that afternoon, right, which happens often, right, that I'll see you in shul on that Shabbat. And you're going to be wondering, like one of our customs is if someone sends an invitation, you want to say, oh, I got the invitation, thank you so much, and so on. So there's some value in that purpose as well. And so therefore it is okay to open an envelope on Shabbat, provided you're allowed to see what and deal with the contents that are inside, which a wedding invitation or something like that would be allowed. The truth is today, mail, there's not so much that mail in general, what are we opening? But if it's something like that, if it could have some Shabbat purpose, so then it could be okay.
So anything you'd be concerned about, you could open, you're saying, on Shabbat, a mail that you're expecting?
Well, not business related, right? In other words.
Not even if it's bothering you.
What's that?
Even if it's going to be bothering
you. Even if it's going to, right. In other words, my bills will bother me, right? I'll be worried. I can't, I have to tune that out,
okay.
Right? But it's more about personal things or something like that. Yeah. If you're getting a catalog from Macy's and there's a sale, that's not, that's not okay either. Okay. All right. We'll stop here for today. We'll pick up tomorrow.
See you soon.